Okay, good morning. Where it is my side. So we're continuing. We did chapter 9 yesterday. Well, last night I did the recording, but I want to rehash a particular point. We were saying that our body is the city, and there's two kings, and the one king wants to rule everything, right? And the two kings are battling it out: the animal soul and the godly soul, or more specifically, the two Yetzers, the two inclinations which stem from the animal and godly soul. Because even when, let's say, for example, God forbid, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, or more specifically, the undefined, the unrefined, animalistic inclination is ruling the animal soul. The godly soul is still there. It's not that the godly soul disappeared, it's just subjugated, and vice versa. Except in the case of a Tzadik, to different degrees, and a Tzadik Gamor to the ultimate degree, where the animal soul has in a way been completely transformed to holiness and is out of the picture. So to say, in a way, kind of, but for simplicity's sake, that's how we'll begin to understand the concept. But here we have, it's written in the Eitz Chaim, just in the end of chapter 9, that the evil is converted into good, like the good nature itself, through the shedding of the soiled garments, which are the pleasures of this world, in which it has been clothed. So, the animal soul clothes itself in thought, speech, and action, which is simplified in mundane, animalistic pleasures and desires. Very simple. Don't think about this too hard. When I wake up, I want to have a coffee, as an example. That's an animalistic desire. So if Hashem's not in the equation, and if I do it animalistically, which think about this, I want you to ponder this in your day-to-day life. What am I doing animalistically? What is my body just walking to do? I'm not saying don't live, don't eat. I'm not saying that. I'm saying think about it. Think about your actions, your thought, speech, and action. It's just animalistic. Just like a cow goes moo and eats grass, right? We do human animalistic things, which, well, it's likened to an animal, because just like an animal just does its things, the human just does our things. It also includes intellect, by the way. It could be very animalistic, the intellect, by the way. The point is that these animalistic tendencies is where the evil of the unrefinedness of the animal soul lies and is enclosed. So for a person to convert the animal soul, the lust of the animal soul, which is the left side of the heart, into goodness and holiness of the godly soul, right? Not societal goodness, but real holiness where God is involved in everything. The way we do that is there's two ways that pop into my mind. I could be corrected, there could be other perspectives, but just from my perspective, these are my words, there's two things. The first thing is increasing in the godly soul. The one particular channel is meditating on the greatness of God, and that's expanded at length in other discussions. In other words, it's increasing the godly love. And that's the right side of the heart, and that expands and expands and expands and goes into the left side of the heart. But part of the process of taking the animalistic desires in the left side of the heart and converting it to good, we have to let go of the soiled garments, of the soiled full speech and actions. We have to let go of our past behaviors, of our bad habits, and actually do teshuva on them, right? Do teshuva because of them, and let go of them, and cleanse oneself from them. This is like the second motion, which is also very important itself. Okay, so I wanted to just start with that. Let's start chapter 10. So, when a person fortifies his divine soul, this is such an important idea, and I want to discuss this. I think it's really relevant, even if we don't finish chapter 10, because it's relatively long, 2.5 pages. I want to discuss, it's important to discuss this idea, is that we have our body, our animal soul, and our godly soul. Okay, usually we don't speak about the body, but in this case, I want to speak about the body. Now, our godly soul, I'm going to come back to the body. Our godly soul is light, is holy, is vibrant. There's actually an element of, first of all, there's the element of tranquility in the godly soul, but contradictingly, there's an element of, certain element of haste in the godly soul. That like we had to do a mission and the mission's got to be done. There's no being lazy about things, right? That's a certain element from the side of Gevurah, of the godly soul. I'm a Levi from the side of Gevurah, from our father, from the tribe of Levi, and that Gevurah is very much revealed in me, my personality. If you interact with me, you might see it more or less. Also, I'm a very chesed person in certain ways, but the point is, I don't want to tangent too much, but the point is that the godly soul is from the Gevurah of the godly soul comes the certain drive, right? The certain drive, and there's another word I'm struggling to think about it, but that time is precious and time is short. Not that we should be stressed in a bad way, right? That's how it can be soiled in a way by the animal soul. The animal soul is cunning, so any angle the animal soul can come in and can pull us down. So being stressed in a bad way is pulling us down, but to be stressed in a good way, to not waste time. Okay, that's the godly soul. The animal soul can do anything and everything to take you away from fulfilling your mission in this world. It's really that simple. That manifests completely different for everybody. But part of the animal soul that's very common in our generation is heaviness and laziness. Very, very common in our generation. Now, the particular point I want to discuss is that you can have an animalistic soul, a spiritual heaviness, a spiritual laziness, but also, God forbid, people can have a physical heaviness. I wouldn't say laziness, I was saying more physical heaviness that comes from the body. Now, whether it comes from the body or the animal soul, the godly soul can fight it to certain degrees, whatever the case may be. Everyone is a different case, but the godly soul can fight. However, if a person has physical heaviness, a person can, so to say, physically cure that, whether it's going on certain medications, depending what it may be. Like, for example, if a person is clinically depressed, there's a certain chemical in the brain is lacking, or whatever the case may be. There's a chemical imbalance which is making them a physical heaviness. And listen, I'm not an expert in this topic, but very briefly, this is what I understand from my research in that type of stuff. And that physical heaviness can be cured to a certain degree from some people, in a different degree in others. So we're not saying don't cure your heaviness. Cure your heaviness, whatever you can cure. But then there's a heaviness of the animal soul, that to a certain degree there's no real cure for it, but rather that's where the battle really comes in. But we have to really tune into our godly soul and fortify our godly soul to fight. Now, there are methods and techniques to be lighter in general. Eating more refined foods, obviously kosher, eating more spiritually kosher food, higher level of kashrus, and physically good, healthy foods. Going to the mikveh for guys every morning. Can't say I do that currently every morning. I used to. I don't have a mikveh around. I used to jump in the pool. Sometimes do still. But that's for a guy, it's very lifting spiritually. It really lightens a person. And there's certain things, being besimcha, singing, there's just certain techniques to do to make a person more light. And that helps significantly in the battle between the godly soul and the animal soul. So we're not saying that the battle has to be difficult. For some people, the battle is extremely difficult. We must not, God forbid, judge. But in their shoes, from their perspective, Hashem has given them the power to succeed. But we can only look at ourselves and say, I have the power to succeed. But we must not judge another person and say, well, they're not succeeding. God has given them the strength to succeed. Why are they not succeeding? God forbid, we must not do that. We must look at them with mercy, eyes of mercy and eyes of chesed. But on ourselves, we should have a little bit of gevurah, not too much, but a little bit of gevurah from the godly soul to say, you know what, I can succeed. and God has gifted me to succeed, and God believes in me. And sometimes there might be ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I'm a winner. That type of idea for a person to look at themselves like that. But okay, fine. The point I wanted to clarify is that this war, it's very complicated. It's not so simple. Wherever we can help ourselves be lighter, kol hakavod. But at the same time, wherever we are heavy, and it's difficult to whatever it may be, to get up in the morning, to say brochas, to do another mitzvah, to learn more Torah, whatever it may be, that heaviness of the animal soul or the body or the combination, whatever it may be, we should realize, it's really beneficial to realize this chapter 10, that this is the place for the war to be waged. The war of the godly soul versus the animal soul. That the godly soul needs to kick in and fortify it. Fortify the want to do the mitzvah, to have that extra connection to Hashem, to bring the nachas to Hashem. That's really the Hasidic approach, at least from our perspective, of course. Right. Fine. So the Tanya is going into a whole discussion on the Tzadik. I don't want to get into it too much, to be honest. I can't remember how we started off chapter 1, what my discussion was, to be honest. But at the end of the day, the discussion of the Tzadik is not relevant for most of us. It is good to discuss stories of Tzadikim, so I really would say interject at this point. If you are listening to my shirim and listen to stories of Tzadikim, I would really highly recommend that. And that would suffice, in my opinion, on learning about the righteous person. It just gives you a perspective of an entirely different life. Because what is a righteous person, a real tzaddik? They live a different life to us. They might look that they live the same life, but I'm telling you now, their life is completely different. So that's the intellectual understanding, but the stories really bring it to the heart. And it lightens a person. It really lightens a person. Okay. Fine. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay. So just to continue and say that one of the characteristics of the righteous, whether an incomplete tzaddik or a complete tzaddik, is that they hate Sitra Achra. They hate the concealment of God with a consummate hatred. A complete tzaddik hates the Sitra Achra completely. And an incomplete tzaddik hates it to a lesser degree, to different degrees. It's a continuum. It's not to say that a tzaddik goes around and hits wicked people. That's not what we're saying. Because that wouldn't be a tzaddik, let me tell you. A tzaddik hates in his heart the forces of evil. Doesn't hate people, but he hates the element of evil within a person. At the same time, he loves the part of the person that he is created in God's image. So I'm saying it's a whole different way of living. It's a different way of living. That's why it's so difficult for us to comprehend, to tune into their way of living, because we are like swimming in the ocean, struggling to stay afloat. Some do better than others. The tzaddikim are flying in the clouds. Think of it like that. It's a different existence entirely. So I wanted to discuss another point here, is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, I have seen superior men, that is the complete righteous, and their numbers are few. And this is very important. And then there's another case when Rav Chia wished to ascend to the heavenly throne of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. A lot of background involved, but the nutshell is, and a voice came out and said, who of you have come here, has converted darkness into light and bitterness into sweetness? Otherwise do not approach here. So in other words, it's saying that even if you are righteous, but not a complete righteous person who has attained the level of a complete transformation of evil in this world, starting with his animal soul and then spreading out to the rest of the world, they cannot enter the chamber of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the idea is that there might be righteous people, incompletely righteous people, but they are infinitely lower than a completely righteous person. So it's quite an interesting idea that you have your average person is like in the sea, and then your incompletely righteous person is flying in the clouds, and your completely righteous person, they are in the stratosphere. I don't even know what the right word is. They are flying from planet to planet. So it's also like a whole change on perspective. It's also like the difference between righteous people or Talmidei Chachamim and a Rebbe. We can't compare because a Rebbe is not just a holy person. A righteous person is a holy person. A Rebbe is the leader of the generation. A Rebbe is an individual who's had to guard. And I mean, the thing is, it's a whole different plane of existence. Also, within righteous people, you might have people who are righteous beyond their era. Others are righteous within their era as well. And also within Rebbeim, you have Rebbeim that were beyond their era as well. So the point is that just because we're humans of flesh and blood does not mean we're on the spiritual same plane. And there's infinite gaps between people, and there's multiple infinite gaps between other people, and it's just so much beyond our intellectual comprehension. It really is. Fine. Let me just continue reading. Hold on. And then we end with this discussion of a righteous person, even though I kind of said we weren't going to discuss. I guess it's in the text, but just briefly, is that part of the idea of a completely righteous person is they're not doing things for themselves. Now, immediately, there's a person is going to have a difficulty with this because we've discussed before that part. I'm pretty certain we've discussed this in these shirim. That part of the godly soul is it's selfless. So even a basic Beinoni, your average Yid who tunes into their godly soul is not doing things for themselves. Nevertheless, there's elements and degrees of selfishness involved in their avodas Hashem, where they do their avodas Hashem for their own sake, in a way, to certain degrees. The completely righteous, the entire existence of life on this planet is not about them. That is absolutely mind-boggling. Our Metzius, that word we might come across again. The word Metzius means our existence. Barely translated our ego. But our existence, even if a person is humble, they have a Metzius, they have an existence. Our Metzius is about me. And then I try to tune that into Hashem. I try to tune that into Torah and mitzvahs. You're completely righteous. Their existence is Hashem, and they are secondary to that. Also, it's a very difficult idea to grasp intellectually, but it's just a different way of living. And this actually links up to Mashiach, that Mashiach is like, in a way, the ultimate example of this, that he is the king. But why do we keep saying we want Mashiach now? We want Mashiach now. Why don't we say we want God now? We want God now. Because the whole point of Mashiach is God. And the answer is that Mashiach is a human of flesh and blood that is like a glass vessel. That the light of Hashem shines through him, doesn't get, God forbid, tainted or altered in any way or form, and just shines through him to the nation. So he is the shining light of Hashem in this world. That is what Mashiach is. He's a human of flesh and blood, a Jew, born a Jew. He's a king, but he has no ego. He has basically as little Metzius as possible, contradictingly, paradoxically. He's just the shining radiance of God in this world. That is what Mashiach is, like the ultimate example of this. So, and we are able to tune in this to a certain degree. This could be one of the reasons why the Alter Rebbe brought this in the Tanya, chapter 10, quite early on, relatively out of 53 chapters, and it's quite a long, lengthy first book, is that we are able to a certain degree to be in an oath was administered, be a tzaddik. And we have a difficulty being a tzaddik according to the Alter Rebbe. What my understanding is, according to the Alter Rebbe, is being a tzaddik is not within our control to do. It's a gift from God. It's a gift from God. I can't swim 100 miles an hour and then fly in the sky. That's the metaphor. I can't be a tzaddik. Doesn't matter what all the effort that I do, unless Hashem gives me the gift of a tzaddik, I can't be a tzaddik. Okay? The point is, we were still given an oath to be a tzaddik. So the question is, how could we be given an oath to be a tzaddik? What I mean by given an oath is that our souls were told to take an oath to be a tzaddik. So my soul, your soul, everyone's soul in heaven before we came down to earth made an oath, I will be a tzaddik. And we come down here and what? Not a tzaddik. In order to fulfill the oath of being a tzaddik, we can be like a tzaddik. How do we be like a tzaddik? This idea of being this godly vessel. This idea of just being a divine chariot for Hashem and just doing things for Hashem. Really not for us. Whether it's an act of kindness. I'm giving an apple to somebody. It's not about me. It's about the person. Right? I'm giving tzedakah. It's not about me being so good. I'm giving tzedakah. It's about the money that's going into the receiving end. Giving it anonymously as an example, whatever it may be. It's not about me. It's about God and the greater good and dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place of God in this world, preparing this world to be a Mashiach. That's what it's about. It's not about me. That is the way we can be a tzaddik. We can be like a tzaddik. We can, to a certain degree, tune into that reality that the tzaddik gamor, the consummate tzaddik, lives in that realm at all times. Tanya Chapter, end of chapter 9 a bit, and a bit of chapter 10.